It's day one here at the Cannes Yachting Festival, and one of the most exciting boats here at the show is undoubtedly this. That is the Marex 440, a boat that's been in development for quite some time. So the public has been awaiting its arrival quite anxiously, and true to form, since the show opened its doors this morning, it's been absolutely full of people seeing what it's all about. Now on board we have Thomas Allred there, and in the background Espen. They are brothers, they're the guys behind the brand, they own the brand. And in many ways it's a classically Norwegian kind of builder. High quality construction, quite subtle, understated looks, but loads of clever thinking on board here. Now before we actually get on board, it's worth taking a look at this aft platform, which rather handily Espen is modelling for us now. At the press of a button, it drops down to water level, and you'll see that the steps slide away and drop down as well, so you can just step down to the platform for water sports or swimming, or you can even drop that platform up to 60 centimetres below the surface of the water, so that a tender can drive straight onto that and you can lift it out. And it's capable of lifting anything up to a 3.2 metre tender, so there's a decent bit of choice there for a boat of this size. Now let's take advantage of the opportunity to actually jump on board past these people, because the clever thinking continues all over this boat, and that's before we even jump into the cockpit itself. On the starboard side beneath this locker, you'll see we've got the shore power, which is neatly contained on a little reel there, so you can simply pull it through this gap, close up that lid, and there you are. How clean and simple is that? Next to that, we've got a good space for fenders and lines, although as you can see from this runner, if you like, you can use this space for the optional passerelle that comes out from this section. We move across, there's a big locker beneath this gentleman's feet, which I will now just open. Again, that goes a good distance side to side, and it's fine for your lines and your fenders and so on. Next to that, we've got a little washdown hose for your decks. And finally, on the port side, we've got a really handy drained locker. Plus, behind that, little hatches for your mixer tap and your transom shower. So it's a really neatly designed back end, this. Really hard working. Now that cockpit, lovely though it is currently occupied by a load of people getting excited about what this new boat offers. So we'll head forward. And as we do so, you'll see we've got a nice grab rail, high level, plus down by my hip, well, that comes up pretty high. It feels very secure indeed. It's not particularly wide side deck, but it's wide enough. And on a boat of these compact proportions, you'll take that if it means you get a broader beam inside that saloon. Now let's pop up onto the foredeck. We have to go up a couple of steps there. Up here it's good to see we've got sufficient length that you've got the sunbed forward, an island sunbed with nice generous walk around decks there, and after that we've got skylights plus a hatch, so even when you're occupying these sunbeds, you're not blocking the light going down into the lower accommodation. So that's a very handy touch. And again, if we look here, cup holders on either side, but just look at the thickness of those slabs of teak. Beautifully done. I've actually got a bottle with me. It doesn't fit in there, they're relatively small, but it's a handy feature nonetheless, as long as you use espresso cups rather than proper British style tea mugs. Now we reach the forepeak, and as you can see, in classical Nordic style, we've got plenty of space there to step off, but what we have here is an anchor mounted down on the inside the hull with an exit point on the stem. If I just come down, we'll see how that works. I'll lift up the big fold out bowsprit, and if I look down here, there's the anchor. A little panel comes away from the stem, out the anchor goes and drops, and there's also a camera down there, so you can see what's happening from the helm without actually having to head forward to the bow to check out that everything's okay. So we'll close this heavy duty bowsprit back down and close up that lid as well. As I say, space is really generous up here. And if we look down here at these heavy duty cleats, you'll see we've got little stainless steel linings to protect the woodwork from rubbing lines. We'll head back down to the port side this time, taking care to notice this. That's a little door on the port side by the co-pilots. There's another on the starboard side, so access onto these side decks is really fantastic. And it's worth noting on the port side, exactly as on the starboard side, that the side door there is directly next to a boarding point, which makes loads of sense. As we're walking aft, let's just have a little peek on top too. I'll have to climb up on these rails. Hopefully boat number one is as sturdily built as production boats will be, because up here you'll see we have space for 8 solar panels. Now of course that's not enough to run your air conditioning unit. This boat has air conditioning and heating, so when you close off those canvases you can basically use it as a 4-season boat with climate control. But these are certainly enough to run your fridges and your lights and the other systems on board, so you don't have to rely solely on your generator. And now, as if by magic, this aft cockpit has more or less emptied out. Everyone's shifted forward into the saloon, or I should say the galley stroke saloon, because this variant is the Gourmet Cruiser with a huge galley split across the central companionway. It's very impressive space in its own right. But let's have a look at this aft cockpit first. Close the door. You have to give it a bit of a slam, because on the prototype model this doesn't quite fit as it should, but that's what a prototype is for. As you can see, we've got a huge C-shaped seating unit around the port side with equally huge fold-out table that comes all the way to the starboard bench. So it's a massive, massive space, a huge party space, easily big enough for 10 people. Now you can, if you wish, spec this starboard bench as a barbecue instead. But if I go and sit myself over here and look across, it really is a tremendously sociable zone of boat. It's nice to see that we've got these lovely thick teak grab rails all round. They orbit the entire space, and overhead we have a sunshade that's manually operated, because as you're opening and closing it, you want to see if you've got any snags or difficulties with your canvases, so you can stop, sort it and then go again. Minimises weight, minimises complication. So that's a very handy feature. And of course, if I look to the side, you'll see that these are the doors for those canvases. So you can wrap this entire cockpit space up, protect it from the elements. And when you do so, you've got a tremendous cylinder of accommodation all the way through to that screen up there at the helm, which is quite reminiscent actually of the kind of accommodation that we enjoyed on the original aft cabin cruiser from Marex when we tested that up in Norway. Now before we head forward into that saloon, let's just crack open the hatch for the engine bay. Again, that's a good sturdy solid lid, quality insulation there, and good sturdy rams that lift it up without you having to struggle. There's also a little tread plate you'll see down there on top of that Volvo Penta D6 480. So we'll use that and we'll pop down into the space. Once you're in here, I've got to say that's a lot more spacious than you anticipate. Loads of space on the port side there for the hot water tank. More space on the starboard side for a generator. This has a 1200 litre fuel tank that's positioned ahead of this bulkhead, and it's got a big 780 litre water tank too. That's positioned centrally further forward. But that just illustrates how this is supposed to be a proper cruising boat for if you want to go long distance for a week or so with your family. Now these engines we have here, as I say, they're D6 480s hooked up to IPS drives. You can also have D6 440s hooked up to stern drives, and there is going to be the option of V drives as well, but they're still testing those out. So as it stands, it's stern drives or IPS drives. The stern drives were good for around about 33 knots according to Espen, and the IPS drives in this configuration good for 37 knots. And that's in spite of the fact that as things stand, this boat is kind of overbuilt. It's a prototype, so there's a bit too much fiberglass, some heavy duty kit on board. It comes in at around about 15 tons, and ideally Espen wants to reduce that by at least a ton, down to 14, 13 if possible. Now if we make our way into the saloon, as I say, this is the Gourmet Cruiser variant, so we've got a huge C-shaped galley on the port side, really is the hub of this zone of the boat. And if we look aft from there, its interaction with the aft cockpit is absolutely fantastic via this bar. But you can of course shut it off if need be. We've got a door on the starboard side, plus beneath this folding section of bar we've got a partition that slides all the way up into its slot just there. But the galley itself is extremely well spec'd. We've got an oven there, we've got loads of work surface, we've got high level storage there as well. We've got a 4-ring induction hob, though gas of course is an option, and we've got a twin sink here. On the starboard side we've also got loads, and I mean loads, of refrigeration. Look at the scale of this. We've got that there, we've got an additional one of similar size in the lower section. We've also got a huge fridge built into the starboard side of that galley. And in addition to a whole load more work surface, we've also got a really deep fridge built into this section too. So if you're planning on a really long extended cruise, there's absolutely no reason for you to rely on shoreside facilities for your supplies. There's quite a neat little feature up here too, well not on this particular model, but it's an option. Just inboard of these high level storage boxes, you can have a TV built flush into this roof, and then with a couple of brackets it just folds down and you can swivel it so it faces aft towards the guys in the cockpit, or inboard towards the guys at the galley, or even forward towards the co-pilot seats. And now let's move up there right now, because I think it's often quite difficult for designers and builders to factor extra ingenuity into a place that has a very particular function like a helm station or like a co-pilot seat, but they've really done it here. As you can see, you've got a couple of elevated seats here with really good lateral bracing and built-in bolsters. We've also got a foot brace there, which is very comfortable. I've just sat in that seat, and what I really like is that while you're sitting there with your feet on that foot brace, you can hit this button. I think it's this one. Yeah, there we are. And you'll see that that entire section of dash moves out towards you. Makes it much more intimate, really improves the position. And then of course you've got the adjustable wheel as well, so you can adjust it specifically to your body shape. It's a really handy feature. We've seen similar things with those kind of roll-out sections of dash on offshore pilot house cruisers, but this little electrical version is very welcome indeed. Now, if we come over here, you'll see we've got easy access to the side deck and to that boarding point that I was talking about, plus lots of rails to tie off your fenders and lines if need be. We also got easy access to the joystick from that part of the boat, which is very important. We've got the throttles there, plus your trim tabs down below, the zip wake system, a little bit of switch gear here too, and your bow thruster. And we also have a couple of 16-inch plotters here, but there's space here on this upper tier of the dash for 3 12-inch plotters if you prefer. Now let's look across to the port side and the co-pilot seats, because this is a huge bench, big enough I'd say for 3 people, which is very nice if you want a bit of company while you're cruising at the helm. And what I really like is the fact that just ahead of that we've got this lovely, again, thick chunks of teak, this lovely little plinth here. Now you can leave it like that, you've got access to your own data displays, your own plotter, plus your own cup holders, 3 of those for the 3 people that fit here. But if you like, you can lift this up back onto the dash top there. You swing out this little arm, and once that's done, you can open this right out, which creates an enormous tabletop for your tea, for your computers, your sandwiches, your newspaper, whatever you like. It's tremendously relaxing. And of course, all the while, you've got that lovely side door, which is equally good for ventilation on a hot, steamy day like today, as it is for seamanship practicality when you want to get outside and you can't squeeze yourself past the skipper. Now let's pop down below and see what we have down here. Now you have a fairly featureless central corridor, and the basic arrangement involves a forward owner's cabin with an ensuite on the port side, plus a day heads on the starboard side and a pair of cabins beneath that saloon, one on the starboard side, one on the port side. Now we'll pop into the port side first. As we do so, I should point out that this is the 3 cabin variant. You can also spec it as a 2 cabin variant, and I'll explain what that's all about in a bit. But as we come in here, you see the enormous headroom I was talking about beneath that galley on the port side. As I say, it's the same level of headroom even if you go for the Scandinavia version with the seating instead of the galley. It really is a place that you could spend a significant amount of time. If you just wanted a bit of privacy, you could come down here and just relax. It's air conditioned, as are all the spaces on board this boat, and heated should you need it. And although it's currently rigged as a pair of singles, you could also rig this as a double. And rather handily, the backrest operates as the infill, so you're not messing around looking for additional cushions. There's also a changing area here, plus a little bit of hanging storage, which is always useful when you plan to cruise long term. And for the same reason, it's great to see a washing machine fitted in here too, as well as these rather lovely little opaque glass panels in the doors to keep the light bouncing around. Now let's head over to the starboard side where you'll see more of the same. And in the absence of a washing machine here, of course, you have a larger changing area, again with really generous headroom beneath those Helm mouldings. And if we look aft, you'll see this one is rigged as a double bed, and it's a really generous footprint. That there's only space, of course, for the bed itself, but the scale of that is very impressive. The windows are very large, and I like the modernity of those blinds too. It looks very cool. While we're talking about the finish, it's worth mentioning this wood here. Now that's walnut, a walnut veneer on ply. Up top outside, as I've already mentioned, there's plenty of natural teak, and in the saloon they use ash, which is good to see. It's been a very popular fabric with Marex customers in the past, so it's really good to see Marex continue to use ash on its most recent models. This is also rather nice. All these bulkheads covered in this kind of fibrous, natural Hessian style carpeting, which looks and feels fantastic, really softens the light. And in the main cabin itself, we have an island bed, a really big one, no taper at all there, quite elevated, so we've got lots of storage underneath as well as storage on both sides. And again, really decent size of windows there, reading lights at the head end, and a nice mirror with ambient lighting, plus hanging storage, and again more mirrors on both sides. And if I look up above, you'll see there are those skylights from the foredeck that are unencumbered by the sunbeds. And let's have a little look in the ensuite facilities. Now, when you walk in here, you think, oh, goodness me, that can't be the shower through there. Can't be the size for that. And you'd be absolutely right. The shower is right here. The main compartment is the shower. And then you have the toilet and the sink outboard of that. This is a concertina door. So if I open that up, that comes round and shuts off the toilet and the sink. So you can have your shower while keeping all your towels and your bits and bobs, your toothbrush and so on, over on that side, nice and dry and out of harm's way. When you finish your shower, open it back up, and you can get yourself dry, get yourself organised before you make your way back into the main cabin. So that again is a good space. But while I have it in mind, I want to just nip back up top past the new batch of interested customers. I'll nip to the port side this time. I told you there were plenty of interesting features on this boat, so many in fact, that it's very easy to forget a few of them. And I'll just skirt around these guys and walk over these hatches to the starboard side now. These cushions are actually buoyant, so you can disconnect them, chuck them into the water, and your kids can play on them like lilos. And apparently, according to Espen, the principle there is not just benevolence and design ingenuity, it's actually a slightly manipulative way to get the children of potential buyers to say, Dad, Dad, this is the boat for me, look, it's got floating cushions. Clever work from Espen. That then is our brief, all too brief, whistle-stop tour of the new Marex 440. It's time for us to jump off now and give everyone else the chance to take a look. But don't worry, we've spoken to Espen, and once this show is finished in 5 or 6 days, we'll be taking this boat out for a sea trial so we can really put it through its paces and see if the dynamics are as impressive as the design.